Got an update for you guys on this 2006 CBR600RR. I've been chasing a rough idle issue for the longest time. I've owned this bike for a year now, and this is what it sounds like. RPMs are stumbling like crazy at idle, and this only happens when the engine is hot. So if I start it up cold and go for a ride, I don't know, 15 minutes, seems completely fine, and then it starts acting up like this every time. A little background on the bike is that I picked it up off Craigslist for $2,800. It was originally a track bike that was low-sided on the track. Upon picking it up, this was the only visible damage that I could see. The indentations, the scrapes were not that deep, and judging from the pattern and stuff and where it hit the foot peg there as well, I couldn't imagine he was going very fast, to be honest. So I figured I'd take a gamble on it. I picked it up, I rode it for about a week there, and I noticed anytime the engine would get hot, this rough idle would begin to surface. And so I started digging into the forums, and a lot of the guys were saying, you know, hey, check the idle screw, which is located on the left side of your bike here. It's this little dial. You can turn left or right, and it will adjust the RPMs at idle. I tried that, and it didn't seem to smooth it out at all. As you can see in that video, it's kind of jumping around. So I was kind of stuck for a couple weeks there. I started, digging into the forums a little bit deeper, and some guy asked me, hey, what aftermarket parts do you have on the bike? And I said, well, there's actually quite a bit. Looking it over, the guy had a Power Commander 3 and an ignition module that kind of adjusts the timing and the spark advance. Or spark arc or some shit like that. He also had this full exhaust, a Leo Vince SBK titanium exhaust without the O2 sensor installed. He has a quick shifter and a Motion Pro quarter turn throttle sleeve on there. So it was very clear to me that the guy had done a bunch of changes, namely through these two modules here, the ignition module and the Power Commander. So the guy told me, hey, I know you have that full exhaust on there, but your best bet is honestly just removing it all to see whether or not the bike operates fine. So I took him up on that advice. I had some factory headers laying around. I don't have the mid pipe and the muffler at the end there, but I did have the headers, and really that's all I needed to do my test. So I removed the full exhaust, put the factory headers on there, and then the factory O2 sensor, which was pretty critical to my test. That plugs back into the ECU, and it essentially monitors the exhaust coming out of the tailpipe to determine whether it's running lean or rich, and it will do, necessary adjustments to the fuel trims to get it running properly. I had the bike running for about 20 minutes because from what I read, that's how long it takes to get the readings from the O2 sensor back to the factory ECU. So I did that. It seemed to smooth out a little bit, but really, I don't know. Ultimately, it kept resurfacing all these issues. So I said, to hell with it. I know that all the factory wiring is correct. The vacuum lines are hooked up properly. All the ports are plugged in. And then I said, well, what does it take to make an engine run, air, spark, and fuel? So I wanted to turn my attention to The air box, that was the next step that I did. Was I peeled off the gas tank fairing, took off the air box, looked in there, and there was an aftermarket air filter. It was by K&N, which is generally the better bet. You know, you'd like to go there with that brand, but I figured I want to go entirely back to stock. So I bought an OEM air filter, threw it in there, started the bike, nothing changed. I said, okay, the air's good, the vacuum lines are good. Let's move over to the ignition and the spark. So I took out the ignition coils and the spark plugs and looked at them, and it seems like there was signs of pre-detonation. There was a lot of sooty deposits, like carbon buildup, and even some slight residue of oil on there. So I said, well, I'm just going to swap out every ignition coil and every spark plug and see if that does anything. Turn the bike back on, excuse me, and it seemed to, you know, be a bit smoother, but I don't know if any of this is like mental. You know what I mean? Like you do a 4-hour job and you're like, oh yeah, I did something there. Like, so I don't know. Seemingly it felt to less vibration and the idle was a bit better, but took the bike out for a ride for about 20 minutes. The surging or the bouncing idle came back. So I said, all right, the air's good, the ignition, the spark's good. It must be the fuel. So I took the fuel, the gas tank off, took the sending unit out, the fuel pump out, and saw that there was a little corrosion there, which I found was weird. So I said, all right, well, I'm going to go buy a new fuel pump, $100, I don't know, it's like $130, Optum fuel pump, that comes with a fuel pressure regulator, breather hoses and all that good stuff. So I replaced, the fuel sending unit inside of there. So now 100%, I know I have factory wiring. I have, you know, beyond the factory wiring, the components that those wires are leading to, an example, you know, the fuel pump, the ignition coils, the spark plugs, the air filter. I know all of that is good now, 1000%, right? Turn the bike on, the issue did not go away. So kind of at a loss for words, didn't know what to do. Reading up on the forums, a lot of guys are saying, oh, your bike must be running lean. I said, to hell with it. I'm buying a Power Commander 5. That was a secondhand off Craigslist. And then an auto tune directly from DynoJet. So I spent $400 on that. But the return policy on that is if you install it, you can't return it. So yeah. So anyway, I want that to be my very, very last resort. Okay. Doing some more research last night, I come across this Seafoam spray, top end engine cleaner and lube. Okay. Panning back to the aftermarket parts that this guy had on originally, these Power Commander and ignition module. When I looked at the fuel maps on this Power Commander 3, it was very clear to me that a professional did not put those values inside the map. Some of the cells showed 99% increase in fuel, which tells me this guy was just dumping this thing with fuel. And I read that some of the symptoms could be that unburnt fuel will leak down into your cylinders, robbing it of all that lubrication. Okay. And it causes a lot of friction. You get scarring, ton of bad stuff comes from it. So So yeah, I came across this sea foam and I said, well, while I have, the gas tank fairing off, it's only 10 more screws to take off the top of the air box. Let me take that off, expose the throttle bodies, and spray a can of that shit in there and see what that doesn't do. This afternoon I did that, and I'll be damned. It seems like the problem is gone. So just to recap, I had spent like $150 on my ignition coils. I spent like $90 on my spark plugs. I spent like $30 or $40 on an air filter, $130 on a fuel pump, $150 on a secondhand Power Commander 5, and then the big whopping $400 on the auto tune. Okay, spent all that crap chasing this problem, and I mean, I don't know for sure, but my initial impressions is that this spray, completely restored the bike. So I'll show what it's sounding like now. It's up to 190 degrees. RPMs are stumbling like crazy at idle, but it's nowhere near what it was before. RPMs are stumbling like crazy at idle, and yeah, I mean, I highly recommend you guys, if you guys are having similar issues with the idle, start with this screw here. If that doesn't do anything and you have a stock bike, I would just go straight to taking off your gas tank fairing, taking off these 10 screws here, removing your ECU, taking off this cover and exposing those throttle body boots, and just getting it done. And I bet you anything it works. Anybody who has the aftermarket components, I mean, I would remove them all. And I know that's kind of a rookie. I mean, a lot of experienced guys would be like, that's a really dumb thing to do. But that's that was an easy way for me to identify whether it was these aftermarket components that were broken or if it was the bike itself. Okay. So that was a huge comfort factor, just spending the 2 hours to remove all that crap. But anyway, hope this helps you guys. And like I said, I mean, this stuff does wonders. If you're having issues that resemble that video of the idle in the beginning, go ahead and buy yourself a can of this shit and dump it in there and see what happens. Alright, so I just started the bike with the air box off. That's just the top of it. Exposes the throttle body boots down there. It's idling relatively smooth. Make sure you don't drop anything down in there. So I'm going to let it come up to operating temp, and then I'm going to start spraying in the top end cleaner. It says to rev it up to 2,000 RPMs while you're doing it until the entire can is gone. Just running my hands over these throttle body boots, it feels like the air is slightly restricted on this number 4 cylinder. So I'm going to try to focus my attention there and see what happens here. and start dumping this stuff in. I'm going to set the idle screw a little high so I don't have to have my hand on the throttle. Switching between cylinders to see if it's generating any more smoke in a specific area, specific cylinder. Trying to get it all the way around the entire throttle body plate, entire surface of it. The more I hit areas that seemingly have not been touched, seems to smoke up a hell of a lot more. If I hold it down continuously, it just dies out. So I don't know if that's the move. So I'm just kind of pulsing it. Alright, I just finished off the entire can. I'm going to let it soak for about 10 minutes and then start the bike back up and rev it through. Alright, it's been 10 minutes, 12 minutes, something like that. Let's see what happens. I don't have the mid pipe on. With this, but I'll cut it back on in about a minute or so. RPMs are stumbling like crazy at idle. RPMs are stumbling like crazy at idle.
Voy a la playa, había subido la marea. Había subido la marea y encontré una paella. agarrar entre las piedras de Chipiona, del faro. Y cuando entro en el restaurante me ve el cocinero con una paellera y adentro la vende paellera.